Gentlemen, hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Beyond the 90. Thank you so much for checking out this preview. We're going to go through some of information about some of the recaps on the Fulham game, some interesting points we missed out, and just some things about injuries and upcoming. We have Alex with us as well. So, Alex, how are you doing?
Not too bad, Neil. Yourself?
Yeah, we're good. I'm good, thank you. And just a couple of things. Hello to Mad Jason and hello to Rich as well. So I hope you're both doing well. A quick question, and you're not there, but can you hear us? Okay, maybe that'll work. This is one disadvantage of doing this live. But however, and hello to Foxton as well. Hope you're doing well, mate. So I think there's one place to start before we get on to the press conference. And there's obviously we've had a bit of time to think over the Fulham result, and we did a post-match on that. Now, just over to your thoughts, Alex. What now can we come into this game? Obviously, we needed a result to kind of bounce back from that Leeds result. How do you think we played overall, like now the kind of dust has settled from the game?
After reviewing everything that, giving it a couple days, I'm quite happy with how we performed against Fulham, especially with what happened against Leeds. Now, I said this, I think, during the Leeds post-match, and then I also said it after the Fulham match, that I think it was just like a one-off. I think it was just going to be one of those things that, they're going to have a bad game, but after that, they're going to be able to turn it around, no problem. And that's what we saw this week against Fulham. It was, it seemed like they were back to like the way that they were normally playing. And, moving forward and looking back at that game, there's really no concern because you had players that stepped up when you needed them to step up. With Vardy out, you had Nacho in and he delivered. Chowdhury delivered as well. And, just everyone around the pitch just seemed to really gel together to get a cohesive team performance. And that's one thing that I think I was more worried about, mainly because of injuries. And I've said it before, and I'll say it again. There's something still concerning when you seem to struggle when your 34-year-old striker goes down. Now, that's the biggest issue for me. And they delivered on Wednesday. But my biggest concern moving forward would be, okay, if Vardy goes down again, you got to just be able to play your game and as if he's still there. Because eventually Vardy's going to retire. I don't like to say that, but it's true. And, this season especially, there's always that chance that injury could be re-aggravated. So I'm happy. And I'm looking forward to what this weekend will bring.
Yeah, I am too, because again, as what you were saying, just from the performance that we had against Fulham, as you were just saying, obviously we're going to have to prepare for Jamie Vardy's an eventual exit. Was that the kind of, obviously Fulham, I don't think were too great, but this is surely a boost to the team that they can play without Jamie Vardy and Wilfred Ndidi, for example, as well, because this was definitely a big game for both. They're both big players for Leicester. We all know that. The fact that we can go in the Premier League with that team and still win, I mean, that can only be positive, because if you take this back 2 years ago, there probably isn't a chance with us winning this game.
Yeah, and I think that it brought a challenge that, I think a lot of us really didn't think about. I think we've been always in this mindset, especially myself of late, being like, Vardy's, he's invincible. Nothing's going to hurt him, and Ndidi's been injured here and there, but, we've been able to, fill the gaps when needed. But I think this game was a true test because, we saw in the Leeds game, you don't have Vardy, it changes, and this game was really one of those games where it was like, okay, he's still not in this match. You're missing Ndidi, you're missing Vardy. Okay, we have these bench players coming on. We need to rely on you. You can't rely on Vardy. He's not in the game. And I think the team, as I said before, they really gelled together in a cohesive manner and really brought forth that team performance. And that's something that you want to see, because if you don't see that, you're going to see a complete gong show, and none of us want to see that.
Yes, I totally agree. We've got a couple of questions regarding Ndidi from Foxton and Jamie Vardy, which we will get onto in a second. So I promise you, we will answer your comments in a second. But just a little bit more, we're going to talk about the Fulham game. One thing that we forgot to bring up, because there was just so much information, we go live straight after the game, was the fact that Daly Campbell and Lesha Bella were on the bench. Obviously, that's because we didn't have that fuller squad and we had to fill the bench with the players. But surely that's a good sign for the under-23s that we are getting these players onto the bench and that Brendan Rodgers trusted them, because there is a chance that he could have left them out altogether.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing for like the development of Leicester. To be able to bring on two players just to sit on the just to have them on the bench is something in my opinion to be to praise, because I think there's a lot of times where you'd be looking at that and Rodgers could have easily been like, I'm not going to bring these guys on. I know they're not even going to get in the game. They're probably going to sit on the bench, but I'm not. I don't even want to test that theory. And I think that's something that you need to really look at and really be happy with, because realistically, like you want these players to develop. So one day you can put them in the starting 11, or you can put them on the bench, either or. And I think just having and it gives them the confidence as well. They didn't go on, they didn't play, but to be able to sit there and really take in a full 90 minutes of all these Premier League athletes and stars playing, that really can challenge them and be like, okay, how do I get here? How do I challenge for this spot or this spot? And I think that's something really good, because it gives that extra drive that I think you might not always get if you're not there. And I've said this before, you have that battle between under not being able to get on the pitch at all, and he's going to have that drive to get back. But then you bring on these younger players that like, okay, you're only here because X and Y are injured. But we want you to watch. We want you to, analyze what you're seeing, and then we want you to bring that to when you do play wherever.
Yeah, I totally agree in terms of that, and especially with Brendan Rodgers talking about attacking midfielder in Leicester, who's been doing really well for the under-23s, and also has come in at the beginning of the season, was playing quite well, and Brendan Rodgers has given him praise. It's only good things. Anyway, let's go on to some of the news that's coming in. Obviously, question from Foxton: I know Vardy is Ndidi back, so Ndidi is a maybe for this match. I know there's a lot of information at the moment and there's lots of injuries we can currently catch up with. However, kind of with Ndidi being a maybe, this is one question I'll give over to you, Alex, because both players played in Hamza Chowdhury. We talked about that on the post match as well, and Mendy. One got 60 minutes in Hamza Chowdhury, one got 30 minutes in Mendy. Since Ndidi, let's say he's not available, what do you think? Who starts for Wolves? Because it's a tough ask. Obviously, we've talked about Hamza Chowdhury, and Mendy, you can know, is a loyal servant. He'll do a good job. He'll clean up. But who would you start in that like whole CDM role?
That's a tough question, because I think we can all say what Hazma brought last game was he brought it for the 60 minutes that he was on, and that was really awesome to see, considering that he wasn't even making the bench most games. But then you also have Mendy, who, when Ndidi went down at the start of the season, he just jumped right in as if there was no, like he's been playing there for years, it seems, and he really took off. Now there's been, discussion that I've seen where everyone's been talking about, Mendy hasn't really been 100%. He seems like he's kind of gone backwards. But in my opinion, that's because he hasn't played as much. You start to develop a routine and a swing of how to, your performances really kind of go hand in hand with the amount of time that you get played. So if I had to choose between the two, I think I would go with Chowdhury. And mainly because there was this big discussion right before the transfer window closed, where there was the rumors going about that he was going to go to Newcastle. And that didn't come to be. And from my understanding, like I said, I don't know if this is true or not, but from what I heard was that Rodgers spoke to Chowdhury saying, if you're not going to go out alone, I'm going to play you more. So this is one of those opportunities where, why not just play him? Why not just give him that opportunity? And the second thing is, actually, this is a perfect example, is, Wolves are a very physical team.
Yeah.
And you got Mendy, who's smaller, and you got Hazma, who's, he can handle that. So in my opinion, I think I would take Hazma over Mendy in this situation.
Yeah, I would agree. Again, as Ian said, thanks for the comment, Ian. Hamza did well in midweek and is more physical presence than Mendy, but Mendy is better on the ball, which I totally agree. And however, Hamza is still young, and I think he can develop that. Something that I think one of his issues was positional awareness, and that really, really improved. That's really improved in the Fulham game. Again, they weren't a good side, and you can see why they're towards the bottom of the table in the relegation zone. However, I think that's true. The one that people are waiting on, as Foxton said, I know Vardy is. In terms of Jamie Vardy is finally fit, and if he's raring to go, I mean, it will have to be seen because there's a lot of things happening at the moment. Obviously, Kelechi Iheanacho took his header superbly well. Looking back at the replay, beautiful ball in from Maddison, and he just drilled it home. I think so. Again, who would you start? Nacho, Maddison, Nacho, Vardy, because Vardy's just coming back. Again, it wasn't a massive injury. However, coming back to it, there's definitely something there that's a little bit strange at the moment. And would you who would you start up front?
See, you know what? Like, given a couple weeks ago, even before he went down, if you gave me the choice between these two, I'd be like Vardy every day.
Mm-hmm.
But, and there's this huge but, you know, and I do bring his age into this, as you know, he's 34. You know, he seems to heal up quite quickly, Jamie Vardy, but he's also 34, and I think, in my opinion, the safest bet would be to start Nacho, and you give Vardy that extra week, you know, or just to heal up, that extra little bit of time to really make sure that, you know, this injury and surgery has completely healed up, and, you know, he's given that 100%. Because if you send him out and he's like 75, 70, or 80, and, you know, he tweaks something, you know, all of a sudden everyone rejoicing that Jamie Vardy's back could turn into, you know, he had to go back in for surgery. He's out for another 5 weeks. Or
yes.
So, and I think one of the other things is that Nacho is one of those types of players that thrives when he's playing well. And as you know, but the confidence is huge for him. And with him scoring a goal last game against Fulham, I think that's something that he'll bring into this next game. You know, he's driven on that confidence. So I think, you know, with him scoring that goal, he'll come into this game and he'll be like, I'm good to go. I'm confident. I'm ready to go. So I honestly think in this situation, I would start Nacho.
Do you know what? A lot of people are saying the same thing, which is so surprising, giving it a couple of weeks ago. We were all saying he's out of the squad. Man, Jason's saying the same thing. Topstar's saying the same thing, and something very similar to what you just said. I don't. So Topstars again says, I don't think Rodgers should rush Ndidi. And I think this both goes for Ndidi and for Vardy in terms of the same thing. If Topstar, you agree as well, because it's a similar situation. Again, brilliant name, by the way, or Topstar. However, when they're coming back from injury, even if it's a small one, you know that something's going to pick up again and again. So it's something that I think will come good eventually. But again, he's back. Another person is Fofana. Because another point just on Nacho. Nacho's like a poem R9 on confidence. The thing is, it's funny, but it is kind of true in terms of, like, as you were saying, once you get some momentum in the team, you look at last time when he had Everton, Arsenal, Aston Villa, and he just kept scoring. He thought, this is the player that we wanted. Then he went quiet for so much time. And you would have thought but obviously it shows really good management from Brendan Rodgers to go, look, Vardy's out. Sorry, I've not started you. You go up and you show me. The same thing with Hamza Chowdhury. I know we've talked about Hamza Chowdhury, and again, a player that Brendan Rodgers can get the most of it. Ian says if Hamza can improve, maintain his discipline, he could be a very good option, and I totally agree because there's some really, really good stuff at the moment. Moving on to another player, Fofana is going to be out for another 4 to 5 weeks. It's not a great thing. I think I've got the quote here. Wesley Fofana is responding to treatment from a hamstring injury and will be out for 4 to 5 weeks. So, which is obviously not good, not something we wanted to see. But what are your thoughts on that? Obviously, Soyuncu's playing well, however, and we've got Amati as well, something that people keep forgetting about. We can play Amati in that position as well. But with Fofana out and obviously Soyuncu coming back into form, is this something that we could really utilize, because it was really hard to get all three of them in the team. Now one of them's injured, unfortunately. It gives them the opportunity to play a back four once again. But do you think Söyüncü will be able to play decently for the full 90 minutes, considering he's not really had much game time in the last 2 months?
I think he will. I don't really have any concern. He's young, and that's one of the things you really need to. For me, I look at that. I'm like, okay, he's young. He can really come back into the game, and to not have really that much of a problem getting back to match fitness. I think he's there. I think for him, the hardest thing was, Fofana and Evans have been lights out. So Rodgers is like, I'm not taking either of these guys out to put you in. I think that's really why he's been on the bench as much as he has been. Moving forward, when you look at it, if we didn't have Söyüncü, I would say, losing Fofana for 4 to 6 weeks would be absolutely terrible. He's been unbelievable, since joining the club. And that's one thing that I think anybody can say is, he's been that one player that really has come in and, blew away everyone's expectations. But the fact that we can be like, oh, okay, Fofana's out, we're gonna plug Söyüncü right where he was supposed to go, and everyone's like, wait, Söyüncü would start on any Premier League club normally, and you have him on the bench. So for me, I have no issue because I'm a huge Söyüncü fan, and him jumping in is like, okay, we have our 2 center backs that we had there last season, pretty much. So like for me, I'm not worried about it. That's the perk of having that depth. Now, if Söyüncü was injured and Fofana was injured, that's a whole new story. Then you have concern because Ndidi's injured and he can usually slot back, so then you would be dealing with a Marty. And then after that, Morgan's injured, so all of a sudden, pulling someone from the under 23 squad or something with that, like that's where you start, hey, Ricardo, you want to play center back?
Yeah, or James Justin, because probably be another one as well. Or Daniel Amati is another person. Again, just coming back from injury, but I think this kind of comments from Rich, so it sums it up. Söyüncü is a mix. Sorry, Fofana is a miss, but with Söyüncü, I think it'll be fine, and that's kind of where we're going at the moment. And again, if we're saying this time last year, we're saying a very different story in terms of what's it called? With Riot Bennett coming into the team, because it was very, very good. Good evening to you, Doug. Thank you so much for checking out our channel. Hopefully we'll have a preview. Obviously, we've got the Liverpool game coming soon, so we really look forward to have you on that. But yeah, we'll go over to the wing the fullback position, because Timothy Castagna is quote unquote responding well to treatment with another hamstring issue, which is not good to hear. However, obviously, he'll probably be out on this game. Don't know how long he'll be. The club haven't really clarified that information as of yet. However, one thing I want to go on to, we've mentioned Nacho, we've mentioned Hamza or Mendy, is in the fullback positions. Obviously, we've got James Justin, and we've got Ricardo, and we've got Luke Thomas. So we've got these 3 players, and obviously Ricardo is just coming back. As we mentioned on the post-match, we are just getting into the routine, and Ricardo is mouth-watering at times. When we saw him, like for his goal, the give and go was like, oh, we've just missed that. Even as good as Castagna was and as good as James Justin was. However, do you drop him straight back in the team, considering he has such a long injury out, or do you give somebody like Luke Thomas a chance? Because I think James Justin is a nailed-on starter. So, what do you do in this situation? Do you say that Ricardo comes in or Thomas comes in, because it is quite a hard choice?
I would never think that would be a tough thing to actually think about. Now, you have that one side where you can bring Ricardo in, and it's Ricardo just seems like Ricardo jumps in, and there's like he just jumps in, and it seems like he didn't miss no time at all. Whereas, and even when he was playing last game where he got the goal disallowed, that's vintage Ricardo. It seems like we've been missing that for so long. He just jumped in and was like, oh, there he is. He's totally fine. But you bring up a good point with Thomas. Young player trying to get into get on the bench or do anything. Do you give him the opportunity to play?
Yeah. Yeah, sorry, you were saying. Sorry, I thought you finished.
It's a tough one, and I didn't think I'd actually consider that because, you know, I honestly think I would play Ricardo though still because I think, you know, with the versatility of James Justin, you know,
Yeah,
that's one thing, and then you just slot Ricardo in, and then if you
and,
need to switch out, you know, Ricardo comes off and you bring Thomas in, you just swap those guys back over. You know, it's the versatility of James Justin changes everything.
yes, and that's one of the most underrated things. And I think we said this before, where Gareth Southgate has been quite a few of the matches, and again, we agree, Ant. If he is there, Ricardo is there, 100% fit. He starts every game. We can totally admit that. However, if he gets another injury, because again, Wolves are a very physical side. They come at you, they play hard. So if Ricardo gets an injury, that's all I'm thinking. Like, and then he's out for another period of time because we've seen. Look at likes of Fafana and Castagna. They're picking up injuries. We can't really afford to lose any more information, any more players. You know. So in this case, we're going. Well, what exactly do we do? And I'd have a feeling that people were saying earlier in terms of I might start Thomas and bring him on after 45 minutes because bearing in mind they only played on Wednesday. That turnaround time for somebody that hasn't played a lot of games is intense. And I think this was the same thing that happened at I'm pretty sure that Luke Thomas started against Wolves at home as well. And he was dragged at half time. And then somebody else came into that position. I could be wrong, but I remember that they were getting showed down the line. I've heard before that Semedo's doing really well for Wolves, and he's one of their key players, has filled in for Doherty. So it could be it could be a hard experience. Again, Ant said, I don't think putting a kid on with Wolves would be a way to go. However, Wolves aren't really firing at the moment, and it's worth the risk. The thing is, should we really? Obviously, that comment, oh, it's brilliant. Should we really do that? I get it, but I'm in two minds about that one. Obviously, a couple of players that, again, somebody mentioned earlier. Where has it gone? In terms of Barnes as well. Again, he didn't score against Fulham, but he's been on fire ever since, and Maddison as well. So, what are your thoughts on Barnes? Because again, Barnes' future starts. I don't quite understand what that means, but if for sure starts. I think that's what it means. For sure starts. I think that's true. I think you look at the likes of Tielemans, Barnes. These players have to hold that position, surely.
Yeah, Barnes is a shoo-in. Like, honestly, if you look at any player on this, you know, there's certain players on this squad that make it in, no questions asked. You know, Maddison is one, Tielemans is another, Evans is another, Justin's another, you know, and Barnes is up there. Barnes is right there. Like it's not if he's out of the lineup, there's cause for concern. Because you know either it's an injury or it's something else, which you know at this point of the season it wouldn't really make any sense. So the only time at this point would be an injury. He starts every game for me now. You know, his quality of play over this past season has just exploded. And, you know, I don't think Southgate is only looking at, you know, Justin. I think he's looking at, you know, Maddison. I think he's looking at Barnes because there's so many players on this squad that could play for England. And I don't think, you know, everyone's been talking about Justin, you know, James Justin this, James Justin that, but I think Barnes is there as well and Maddison is there as well. And these are the players that, you know, these players are starting every game. There's no questions asked. The only way that they're not starting is if they're injured.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And we've talked about shoo-ins. Obviously, Johnny Evans is probably another one. James Justin being another one. Kasper Schmeichel, obviously. I don't know why I've come out of focus. I just did my thumbs up to Diego Kante, and now it's decided that I don't want to exist anymore. However, we'll move on to one more player. Hopefully, the audio is still okay. On that right-hand side, we've got Perez and we've got Allbrighton. Now, this is the point where I'm going, I don't know who plays on that right-hand side. Because it's going to be hard. I think Wolves they used to start with a 3-4-3. Now they've kind of changed to a 3-4-3. Sometimes they play a 4-2-3-1, depending on how they play. It's a really weird position to be in, where we're questioning whether Allbrighton gets in the team. However, Perez didn't do anything wrong. Perez doesn't deserve to be dropped. But with Allbrighton being there, and his work rate and his hustle. And with Nacho now showing that he can score with his head. I can't remember the last time we had a headed goal. It's been a while. So with somebody like Allbrighton on, do you put Allbrighton in and go, right, you know what you're doing. You've got a cross on you. Nacho can head it. Do one of them crosses. We score a goal. We win. So who do you play at that right position? Because for me, that's one place that I'm really stuck at as well.
No, and I agree with you on that. That's difficult, mainly because, I think one thing that we can say that has been very clear is that Allbrighton has been playing phenomenal. He really has. And one thing with Allbrighton is that he is strong on the attacking front, but he can come back and he can defend. And that's the one thing. But then you had Perez when he was in, and his last performance, he played fantastic. He was there in the attacking end, and he was also running back and, while defending. So it's a tough one to decide upon. I think that's, for me, I kind of go back and forth in the fact that, we're not even talking about under at this point, which is kind of wild. The winger that we got on loan in the summer was talked about like crazy, being like, oh, we finally got our winger, he's going to replace Mahrez. We finally got our winger. And now we're like, okay, who are we going to start? We're going to start Allbrighton, or we're going to start Perez? It just seems wild to actually consider this. If I thought about this, I think I'd give it to Kevin. Kevin's a deciding factor.
Every time with Kevin, I'm like, Kevin, cool. Who's that? Oh, every time. We get some Kevins in the chat, please. Kevin!
So, no, I think I'm going to start Allbrighton. That's my decision. But like I said, Rodgers, the way that he's been tactically and strategically playing and setting up formations every week and every game has been all over the place, but it's working. So at this point, it can be either or. And Ian brings up a great point as well. If Ricardo does need the rest, you play Thomas, but then you bring in the back five and you bring Allbrighton in as the wing back. That's just the safer bet.
Yeah, we got a lovely Kevin in the chat as well, which is fantastic to hear. Just a quick one again. We were just talking, because comment confused me for a while. So when was the last time we scored a headed goal? And again, Ibora, Brighton away. I think that's the one I can remember. I think somewhere along the line, Vardy's got one. I don't know where. I don't know how. I feel like it's at home. I'm not sure, but that's a good shout as well. I remember. But again, we all know Brendan's going to pick Mark regardless. We thought that until the Fulham game. And then Perez comes in the side, and it was obviously a tactical change. I've just learned to trust Brendan Rodgers with whatever. Similarly with them sacking with the King Power sacking managers at times, I cried my eyes out when Ranieri went, but in hindsight, it was the right thing to do. So we'll move on to the opponents now, because we've covered pretty much everybody in the team. Wolves are, again, Doug says, mad that Wolves are 14th place, and I totally agree. From what I've heard from Wolves fans, they've been in a bit of a transition stage this year. They've obviously lost to your team, Doug, Liverpool, Jota. I was going to say Jimenez, but that was the wrong player. Jimenez had this horrible head injury, and obviously Doherty as well. So they are in a transition phase, and they are 14th position. They won 2-1 against a Arsenal side who, again, just lost to Aston Villa. So that's quite fun as well. However, what do you think they're going to play like? Because, again, they do have a new player now in replacement of Raul Jimenez, William Jose. But what can you explain? What can you think that about this Wolves team? Because take it back 2 seasons, and when they demolished us 4-3, and it's a very different game. But this season, they've not quite hit form. They're still one of my favourite teams, not to watch, but to support, as in like a second or third club. But it's brilliant. So it's interesting you say that, Doug. Again, Nelson Semedo's not been great either. From what I've heard from, I was listening to BBC Radio Leicester, they were actually talking about a Wolves fan, and that he's actually becoming one of their best players. And I think he was the player that was the reason why Thomas was dragged at half time, because he was actually getting in too much and was getting just taking on Thomas and getting past him. So there is definitely some some players. He's just a shit Ricky P, which is quite funny. But yeah, I've waffled on for a while now. What are your thoughts on Wolves?
Now, I'm completely shocked that they're in 14th place. I think one of the things that I always seem to think that Wolves are always a contender for, a Europa League spot. And this season is in itself is just absolutely wild if you look at the standings. You have West Ham up in the top, and you have teams like Aston Villa up in the top 10. Like it really doesn't make any sense this year when I look at the leaderboard in the standings. But when it comes to the Wolves, I don't know. I'm concerned, and I don't know why. I always feel like they have our number, and that's one thing that I've never always understood, because we just seem to always have it, and then when we face off against the Wolves, it just kind of bottoms out and it flattens, and we just kind of look off. I don't know if I'm the only one that kind of thinks that. It's just from past matches. It's just one of the things that I always seem to feel like I witness, and so I don't know what we're gonna see. I haven't been nervous for a game in a while. Even when we faced Liverpool back, and everyone was kind of gumming and oh, we're gonna win this game. We're much better. I was going in up being like, no, I don't think so. I think this is what's gonna happen. This is anything could happen, and in the end, we got dummied by Liverpool. But this is a game that I'm concerned for, and I don't know why. Yeah.
Yeah, but again, I will just go back to the results. So I'm going back to December. They were beaten by Liverpool 4-0. They were beaten by Aston Villa 1-0. They beat Chelsea 2-1 the 15th of December. Burnley beat them 2-1. They drew to Tottenham at home. Man United against Wolves, they lost 1-0. Then going on to the Premier League, they drew 3-3 to Brighton at home. Then they won against Palace, lost against Everton 2-1. They lost against West Bromwich Albion, so one of their rivals as well. Beat Chorley in the fourth round of the FA Cup, which is probably not too hard. I think me and you, Alex, could do something there as well. Drew to Chelsea. Then we've got Crystal Palace, they lost, and recently they won against Arsenal. So if you look at that track record, it's not the best at the moment, because that's something that's concerning. However, I'm not going to say that we're fully into it, because we did that against Leeds and look what happened. So I'm playing this one carefully, because if we see this, we've seen the form kind of pick up again with the Fulham game. It could come straight back down, to be honest, when it comes to that. Yeah, as it says, 3-3 was at the Amex. So I don't know about their away form, but yeah. So what are your thoughts on that? Because it is going to be a tough game, in my opinion. Won 2 of 19 at the Molineux. Good start, and thanks for that.
Yeah, do you know what? Even you're going through the previous games that the Wolves had played, and it for me, you see it, and it's like a roller coaster. There's win here, loss here, draw, win, loss, draw, win, draw, draw. It just kind of seemed like they're all over the place. And the way I kind of look at that is okay, we lost against Leeds, we beat Fulham, but here I am again, kind of going I think it can go either or. And and that's kind of the approach that I've kind of come across this entire season, because this is I'll say it again, this season is completely like no other season. It's quick turnaround from last season. There's a ton of games. It seems like every week we have one. It just seems nuts. Injuries are on every team. And, the one thing that I've kind of come into this season is not oh, we're going to win 3-0 here. That's the game, because usually when that happens, we end up losing. Or, so I've kind of come into every game with an open mind. Now this game, I got to come into the same, but like I said before, I'm still a little concerned, and I don't know why.
Yeah, again, it's a Leicester way to kind of go and win and then lose. And the thing is, at the moment, where you look at, I think Man United are winning 2-0 currently. It's half time, so they look like they'll take that second position as well. So it's not a chance that we could. There might be a time that we could do that. Another, just I think a good place to end on as well. Some player we mention every single time, Kasper Schmeichel, is on his game and is a game saver, and we cannot agree more. I think Jamie Vardy will always get commented as, yes, the player that saves our bacon. I think a couple of weeks back, I think we went 17 goals since Vardy last scored. Now, it must be over 20 with the amount of games we've played, which is really, really interesting. And which was really interesting. However, what do you, again, coming on to Kasper Schmeichel, we have to say that he's the person that's kept us in games at times, and again will be a brilliant has literally come into the form this season, the form of his career this season.
Yeah, plain and simple. And I've said this multiple times, on past recaps and post matches. Kasper Schmeichel is one of those keepers that does not get the credit he is due in the Premier League. Everyone talks about every other keeper you could possibly think of, but Kasper Schmeichel is just kind of left on the shelf, and he collects dust. Meanwhile, here in Leicester, all of us Leicester fans, we just praise him because he's kept us in this. He keeps us in games left, right, and center. I think without Kasper, we're in a completely different position, and I think the conversation right now, if we were to have it without Schmeichel in net for us, completely different. He's saved us numerous times, especially with how we handle set pieces. And I think that's
how we don't handle set pieces at times.
Exactly. So, having that keeper that you can rely on, there's no stress, and I think the last game even showed, couldn't defend the set piece, wide open header, and, Schmeichel comes out of nowhere and Supermans it. He's the most extremely reliable keeper, and he needs to get, more praise for what he does, because without him, we're not even in a top 4 position.
Yeah, I totally agree. But I think that'll be a good place to end on. So thank you for everybody for your comments. There was quite a few of you: Mad Jason, Rich, Foxton, Tobestar, and obviously thank you for your comment, Ian. Who else we got? The Doug. Make sure you go and subscribe to the Dugout Football channel as well. Well, hopefully we'll have a preview with him soon, and really good stuff. It's very, very knowledgeable about football. And then just at the end, I think Foxton as well. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining in. We'll see you after the Wolves game for a live pre-match commentary just like this, and we'll see everybody in the next video. So goodbye.